unbelievable poll numbers that came out from Quinnipiac dealing with how Americans would respond in the event that we were invaded as Ukraine has been invaded. And I tweeted about this. I saw you tweet about it too, Buck, but I bet a lot of our audience has not heard this. So what percentage, again, this is a Ukraine-like situation in the United States. What percentage of a Democrats would stay and fight versus the percentage that would leave the country if we were invaded like Ukraine is being invaded? Just 40% of Democrats said they would stay and fight. 52% said they would leave the country. That compared with 68% of Republicans who said they would stay and fight, 25% who said they would leave the country. Independents, 57% said they would stay and fight. 36% said they would leave the country. So the idea out there, and by the way, for women, 40% of American women said they would stay and fight, 70% of men. So there is, not surprisingly, a male versus female difference in whether people would leave. As you are seeing in Ukraine, many women and children are leaving the country. So this is alarming in many ways as you break down the overall data. But what's even more alarming than this data, Buck, is age ranges. The younger you are, 18 to 34-year-olds, which are typically the foundation of any military force, only 45% of 18 to 34-year-olds would stay and fight versus 48% who said they would leave the country. Now, substantial majorities of 35 to 49-year-olds, of 50 to 64-year-olds said they would stay and fight. Even senior citizens were more likely to stay and fight than 18 to 34-year-olds. This confirms, I think, what many of us would believe, which is the younger and more liberal you are, the less you're willing to fight for America. But it's still pretty staggering to see these numbers actually out in the public arena here. And again, remember, it's if we're invaded. This is not would you go overseas and fight. This is if someone came to our shores, the majority of Democrats would flee the country.
Wait a minute, Clay. You're talking about a majority of Democrat commies who double-masked at home while watching MSNBC and CNN and rage tweeting about how racist the country is all the time.
Yes.
They wouldn't stay and fight. They actually are cowards when pushed on the issue of whether they would defend their hometown, their homeland. I mean, just juxtapose it, because obviously we have a lot of people who have fought in multiple wars, including those in their 20s and 30s right now. There are people out there who feel very differently. We meant to play this yesterday. This was 27-year-old mixed martial artist and UFC fighter Bryce Mitchell on how he feels. He was asked about Ukraine, and this answer went viral.
Just wanted to get your thoughts on the whole Russia and Ukraine situation.
Here's my first thought is I'm not going nowhere to fight none of these wars for these politicians. I'm staying at home, and when the war comes to Arkansas, I will dig my boots in the ground, and I will die for everything I love, and I will not retreat. If this country's invaded and everybody's saying, well, we got to evacuate, we got to leave, I will not. I will dig my boots in the Arkansas soil, and I will fight for the people that I love, for the land that I love, and the way of life that I love. But I'm not going overseas to fight. I don't know what's going on, to be honest, brother. I really don't. There's so much stuff, and I don't think nobody knows what's going on fully.
Now, there are two levels here. We can get into the going to Ukraine or not issue, but just the sentiment of, if the war came to America, I would dig my heels into Arkansas soil and fight to the death for everything I love. By the way, I have zero doubt that Bryce Mitchell would, in fact, do that. And we think that that's the America that we all know, love, and share. But there is a real portion on the political left in this country who actually kind of hate America, and it's not the America they want it to be. And so if push came to shove, maybe some totalitarian dictatorship from abroad would be better on issues of, the rights of minorities or the transgender or whatever. Anything would be better than the evil racist country this currently is, according to the left. That's what they actually think.
Yeah, and I think we need to be clear here, too. By the way, incredible comments from Bryce Mitchell. I mean, the UFC, if you're one of those people out there that is of the opinion that professional athletes have lost your trust over the way that they've responded to a variety of different political issues over the years, the UFC guys and girls are, I mean, it's hard not to like them. It really is when you hear, first of all, they're putting everything on the line when they step into those octagons, right? But when you hear the way that they think, the raw individual power while combined with love of country from so many of them, their anti-cancel culture, I love everything about most of these guys now and girls. I do think what is alarming is we're aging out of people who are true patriots. Right? I mean, you can talk about Democrats versus Republicans, but I'm even more scared because it doesn't surprise me that Democrats are basically, total complete wusses, and that's not the word that I want to use. But when you have the majority of 18 to 34-year-olds in this country, Buck, that would not stay and fight if the country was invaded, typically the 18 to 34-year-old population, and let's be honest, the 18 to 34-year-old male population, because I'll give a pass here for women and children. Remember what they're doing in Ukraine. I love the rule that they put in place in Ukraine. If you're male between the ages of 18 and 60, you can't leave that country. I love that. I'd want my wife and kids out of here. But the idea that 18 to 34-year-olds, the people who are the youngest, the healthiest, and the most capable of fighting in a war, are willing to abandon the country more than senior citizens are, Buck? There are people over 65 who are far more likely to take up arms to defend the country than there are 18-year-olds. That's everything that's wrong with America today, and it's scary for where we're going in the years ahead.
I mean, there was a bulge of in the polling for the younger age group that said they would leave the country. Clay, a majority overall of Democrats.
Yes.
Said a majority. I mean, for me, that was the biggest takeaway.
But 18 to 34?
Yeah, but that's because that's the greatest concentration of the furthest left ideology within the Democrat
That's what I'm
Party.
afraid of.
But that as they get older and they pay taxes, and this is what always happens. I don't think we're aging out necessarily of patriotism. It's young, naive people who have been brainwashed by the Academy and Hollywood.
So this is where you're more optimistic than me. My concern is these people are going to become awful human being leftists as they get older because of the way they've been indoctrinated.
A lot of them will stay that way. But I mean, there's also what's really 18 to 34 versus 34 to 55. What's really the difference, Clay? I mean, what in this poll do we have the percentages?
Yeah, it's wildly different.
Tell me the difference.
Let me look at it because that's what jumps out at me. Yes, the Democrat angle is crazy. Only 45% of 18 to 34s would stay and fight. 57% of those aged 35 to 49.
That's not that better. That's not that much
better.
Well,
it's 57 to 37 as opposed to 45 to 48. It's a 20-point margin to stay and fight over a negative 3-point margin to stay and fight. Usually what I'm looking at is usually 18-year-olds, like who gets in fist fights? 18-year-olds, right? The younger you are, usually the more prone you are, especially if you're male, to be willing to fight, right? And so the fact that we've ended up there, the other one that jumps out is the 65 plus. I mean, we got a lot of senior citizens who'd be more likely to take up arms to defend America than 18-year-olds.
Oh, seniors have, they've seen more. They know more. They know understand. The you have Bernie Sanders is kind of an exception. You have fewer seniors in this country, definitely. I mean, even talking just within the Democrat Party, who are absurd commies, basically.
Yes.
I mean, Bernie Sanders is a caricature of absurdity in so many ways. But you have fewer people that have lived through life and actually experienced things. There are 18-year-olds or 22-year-olds. Look, you see them at college campuses now all the time. And it's been going on for years this way. They think America is an evil, imperialist, colonialist, racist place. And that's why they're effectively being brainwashed into acting like little revolutionaries who want to either control the system as it is now to stamp out all dissent. And you see this at the big tech and everywhere else. or create a cultural revolution of sorts, something like what they had in China under Mao, to purge all undesirable elements from our culture because it's imperialist and racist and sexist and transphobic and all this stuff.
See, that my concern is when I was 18, was not around very many people who thought America was a bad place. Like, I think when I was 18, most people who were male
well, the Democrat
would have
Party's
stayed
moved
and
left
fight.
overall.
Yeah.
It's moved left.
And that's my concern, that we've got now this generation that truly does believe that America is a voice for evil as opposed to greatness. And that's scary because I wonder whether those people are going to age out of it or not.